Brendon, how are you doing, man?
Yeah, I'm good, and yourself?
All good, all good. Just finished a set of friendly games here against FC Chile as part of your getting ready for the new season. How far are you from where you want to be come kickoff?
I think we're quite a bit behind. Obviously, we've had 2.5 weeks of the rain, so we haven't had a chance to get those training sessions in. But I think the biggest problem is adapting. The boys adapting to our expectations. You know, the level that we're trying to explain to them that the GDL is. So the new boys are taking a bit of time to adapt to the level, the expectations. You know, the mindset. Also arriving to games on time. Even, you know, they still in that mindset of LFA football, or you know, playing in their areas. So that's where the biggest hassle is coming at the moment.
Towards the end of the year, you hosted trials. From that, in terms of recruitment, were you able to get players that you believe can contribute at this level?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I think we found a lot of good players. It's just about them understanding what it takes, and I think that's what our biggest discussion's been, is the new boys coming in. Yes, they've got talent, but they don't understand that the expectations are high. Every game's going to be a tough game. You could be playing a Sundowns, who's a Sundowns Chief Supersport, you know, who are finishing top 3, and you could be playing like last year NWU, for example. Those games, when you play NWU, it's still going to be a tough game. There's no easy games when it comes to the GDL.
Last season, you did fairly well in some divisions. From that performance and where you want to be this season, which areas do you think you need to improve on so that you are able to reach a level that you believe this team has the potential to be?
I think the first step is consistency. We can't have a good game against Chiefs or Supersport or Arisa or Highlands, and then when you play in the other likes, the lower teams, not to be disrespectful to them, but obviously that level, and then you don't show up. I think the biggest concern I've had is consistency. Is, you know, week in, week out, you got to rock up, and I think that's what's happening. Is last year we had that problem with the 15s and 19s. Like, they would have a really good game against a top side in their age group, but then when they were playing teams that were a little bit weaker, they wouldn't show up. So for me this year, it's consistency across the board.
And you mentioned, coach, that you know you've got new boys coming in. They are talented, but adaptation process obviously is taking a bit of time. What would you say are some of the areas, you know, from these boys that they are struggling with, given, you know, the standards of the GDL? Because we hear a lot of young boys saying, I want to play in the GDL, I want to play in the GDL. What do you think are some of the gaps between boys coming from, say, maybe LFAs or just, you know, not formal football coming into the GDL, especially Stream A?
Yeah, I would say probably the tactical side of the game, you know, understanding your role. So if you're bringing in a really good number 8, for example, he can't now play all over the park, because if he gets pulled out of position, we leave big holes. And in the GDL, 80% of the teams will exploit those holes. So that's I think if they could just adapt. Obviously every club plays a different philosophy, so I think if the kids could understand tactical awareness, then they would be able to filter into different clubs easier. So for me, yeah, the tactical awareness would be the first step. Technically, the boys are technically gifted, but when you're telling a boy to make a recovery run or to cover certain areas of the field, when we get pulled out of shape and then they get caught on the same side. So they get drawn a little bit to the ball. So just tactical awareness for me.
Coach, you know, like you said, teams have different philosophies, you know. But what are some of the differences that you find from a boy, say, they've been in a formal academy from age 7, 8, you know, with those soccer schools coming up when they come to under 14, compared to a boy who's not been in an academy or has not played football in a formal structure? When they come and say they're the same age, they are 14, what are some of the differences that you are easily pick between the two and say this one has been through the development phases from foundation, whereas the other one has just been playing football but not in a formal structure?
Yeah, I think that's it, the adapting, you know. So you can see, like, I think a lot of boys that we look at, whether they come from a soccer school background or if they come from the LFAs, wherever it is adapting to the philosophy. So we'll take an example. We've got a boy named Praise. He comes from a different team. I think it was Mondial, for example. But he's taken about 2 months to get into understanding how we play. So technically he's gifted, pass with both feet. You know, you can see he's a hard worker, but then adapting to to the philosophy, the way we want to try and play, you know, the shape, the formation, that's where then he gets caught out. Whereas the other boys, they seem to adapt a little bit more to that because maybe their training setup is a little bit more structured.
Yeah, you've already played in the top 8. What was your assessment of your performance in the quarterfinals?
Yeah, I think obviously 14s didn't get to play because it was a walkover against TS Galaxy. 17s, decision making from us was a bit poor, but I thought we kept the ball well. But there's also got to be standards set. So I think at 17, 19s now, the boys have to start setting standards for themselves. We don't want to just be an academy to compete. You know, we also want to take on the top academies, and if we do that, then obviously we'll be promoting more players to the next level, and that's our goal. Our goal is to obviously take a player from one level to the next level, and hopefully one day play, whether it's ABC Mutepe, whether it's Varsity Cup, whether it's PSL one day Diski. That's what we want to do. So we have to set those standards, and the boys also need to understand if this is what they want to do, it's work. The work's got to be put in.
I remember last season your under 17 started very well. At some point they were considered as one of the title contenders. This season, what goals have you set yourself for all your age groups?
Yeah, this year I think we've got to finish top 5 overall. We're capable of it. I think if I look at last year's season with 13s and 17s where they finished, and I think if I look at 15s and 19s, if we were a bit more consistent across the board, we could have finished higher up. We finished 9th overall, but I think we could have been top 6 overall. So our expectations this year is that all age groups have to be finishing top 6. And if we're not setting those goals, I don't think we'll achieve much. You know, we're going to just be an academy that exists. We want players to move on. We want top teams to be wanting to look at our players because we're competing. And if we're not competing, let's be realistic, top teams aren't going to be looking at our players.
Coach, on the commercial side, we know running an academy is not easy and it's not cheap, especially the GDL where there are so many requirements like having to provide an ambulance for every home game. Those things are expensive and they don't come cheap. How do you find the academy, and where do you think perhaps you'll need assistance, so that if there's potential sponsors listening, how can they then assist the club?
Yeah, I mean our biggest thing is we want the boys to be prepared. What tends to happen is we charge a small reg fee which covers the ambulance, the fields. So if we could get assistance in with people coming in with sponsors, then obviously we can also look at sponsoring players a little bit more and give those players opportunity. But we do try and help. But yeah, I think sponsorship now, if we could get someone that wants to look at sponsoring us to give the boys opportunities, because we have boys coming from all over, Springs, Soweto, Randburgs, to come play for us. So we're obviously we're drawing more players, not just from the south, we're drawing players from all over. But if we could get sponsors, then at least we could help them out a little bit more with transport, because I think that's where we have issues, is players that come from quite far can't get to training because they don't have transport. So if we could get that situation handled, it would be a little bit easier for our players then, not to worry about, we can't make it today because we can't get there. So like even today, we've had quite a few boys missing because they couldn't get here today.
Coach, thank you very much for your time and all the best for the 2025 season.
Thank you so much. Have a good one.